The deal was spoken in low voices, like something shameful that couldn't stand the light of day. The dust outside the small frontier house drifted in through the open door as 18-year-old Clara stood behind her uncle, her hands folded tight enough to hurt. Her parents had been gone for 3 winters now, taken by sickness and bad luck. And since then, she had learned that survival in the West often came with a price. She did not fully understand the words being exchanged, only that her future was being decided without her voice in it. When she finally looked up, she saw the man who would change her life. Elias Crow stood near the doorway, his hat in his hands, his shoulders wide and stiff like he was bracing for a blow. He was a widowed rancher, everyone said so. A man who had lost his wife and child to a barn fire years ago. His face carried that loss in the deep lines around his eyes. He did not smile. He barely met her gaze. The agreement was simple and cruel in its simplicity. Clara would go to Elias's ranch. She would have food, shelter, and protection. In return, she would become part of his household in whatever way time decided. No ceremony, no promises spoken aloud. Just survival traded for obedience. When her uncle finally nodded and stepped back, it felt like the door to her old life had closed forever. The ride to the ranch was long and quiet. Elias rode ahead, leading a second horse for her. The plains stretched endlessly, dry grass bending in the wind like tired souls. Clara watched his back, noticing how he sat in the saddle like a man carrying more weight than his pack. He never rushed her, never spoke sharply. That confused her more than cruelty would have. The ranch appeared near sunset, a lonely spread of land, a weathered house, a corral that had seen better days. But there was something else, laughter, children's voices. Clara froze. Elias dismounted and glanced at her, as if realizing he had not prepared her for this. "They're not mine," he said quietly. "They're my brother's. He passed last spring. I couldn't turn them away." 3 children stood near the fence, watching with wide eyes. A boy of about 10, a girl a little younger, and a small one clinging to the girl's skirt. They did not look afraid. They looked hopeful. And suddenly Clara felt something crack open inside her chest. That night, lying on a narrow bed under a thin quilt, she listened to the sounds of the ranch. Wind against the boards, a horse stamping in the corral, soft footsteps outside her door that paused, then moved away. She wondered if Elias was as unsure as she was. She wondered if she had been given away to a man who did not know how to take her. As sleep finally came, one thought stayed sharp and bright in her mind. Whatever this place was, it was not what she expected, and that made it more frightening than she cared to admit. Chapter 2. Morning came early on the ranch, with the smell of coffee and dust. Clara woke before the sun fully rose, unsure of where she stood in this new world. When she stepped into the kitchen, she found Elias already awake, sleeves rolled up, trying and failing to make breakfast. The children watched him with quiet amusement. When he noticed her, he stepped back like he'd been caught doing something wrong. "You don't have to help," he said quickly, "but you can if you want." That choice, small as it was, surprised her. She tied on an apron and took over the pan without a word. The children relaxed around her almost immediately, asking questions, telling her stories. Elias stayed mostly silent, but Clara caught him watching from the corner of his eye, as if measuring whether she belonged. Days passed, and the ranch began to feel less like a prison and more like a fragile promise. Clara learned the routines, the work, the way Elias treated the children with firm kindness. He never raised his voice. He never touched her without reason. But there was distance in him, a wall built of guilt and old grief. The outside world did not forget them. A neighboring rancher named Holt came riding by one afternoon, his smile thin and his eyes sharp. He spoke of debts, of landlines that needed adjusting. Clara felt the tension in Elias's shoulders before a word was spoken. Holt's gaze lingered on her in a way that made her skin crawl. "She's young," Holt said casually. "Too young to be tied to a man who's already buried a family." Elias's reply was calm, but his voice carried iron. "You're done here." That night, Clara asked Elias about it. He told her enough to know that Holt wanted the land and would not stop easily. The ranch was worth more than Elias had paid for it, and enemies had noticed. Clara realized then that her presence here was not just about survival. It was about standing together, whether she was ready or not. As weeks turned into months, something unspoken grew between them. Not desire, not yet. It was trust. Elias listened when she spoke. He asked her opinion. The children began calling her family without hesitation. But every time Clara felt hope, she saw Elias retreat, as if afraid that caring again would invite disaster. One evening, as the sky burned red over the plains, Elias told her the truth. About the fire, about how he had chosen work over staying home that night, about how he believed love was a debt the world would always collect with interest. Clara did not try to fix him. She only said, "Loss doesn't mean you don't deserve a future." Elias looked at her then, really looked, like a man seeing daylight after years underground. But before either of them could speak more, the sound of distant riders cut through the quiet. Trouble was coming, and this fragile family would soon be tested in ways Clara had never imagined. Chapter 3. The tension hung heavy as a storm cloud that refused to break. Holt's men began circling the ranch, not openly, but close enough to remind Elias they were watching. Clara felt fear, but she also felt something stronger, belonging. This place, these people, had become hers. When Holt finally came with his demands, Elias faced him in the open yard. He refused to sell, refused to be bullied. Clara stood behind him with the children, her heart pounding, knowing that stepping back now would mean losing everything they had built. Holt's threats were sharp, but he stopped short of crossing a line that would bring the law down on him. After he left, Elias turned to Clara, his voice low. "If you want to go, I'll help you. I won't trap you here." Clara shook her head. "This is my home." Those words changed everything. Elias realized then that family was not something he had lost forever. It was something he had been given again, in a form he never expected. He made his choice, reaching out to neighboring ranches, standing firm, refusing isolation. The final confrontation came not with guns, but with witnesses and unity. Holt backed down when faced with a community unwilling to let one man be crushed. The threat faded like dust on the horizon, leaving exhaustion and relief behind. In the quiet that followed, Elias and Clara sat on the porch as the children slept inside. The night air was cool, filled with stars. Elias spoke softly, admitting his fear of hoping again. Clara listened, then took his hand, not as a possession but as an equal. They did not promise forever. They did not rush what needed time. But in that shared silence, both understood that family had already found them. Not through a bargain, not through force, but through choice. As dawn approached, the ranch stood peaceful for the first time in years. Yet the future, wide and uncertain as the plains themselves, waited just beyond the rising sun.